On this edition of River Tales, we'll take you aboard the Flying Fortress in the LST-325, the ships that won World War II. We'll travel to Commerce, Missouri to meet the new and former owners of River Ridge Winery, and then back to Cape Girardeau to meet an artist who has mastered the fine art of origami. And finally, a unique musical collaboration between a professor and student at Southeast Missouri State University has landed their work on Broadway in New York City. The B-17 Flying Fortress and the LST-325 landing ship tank were the two machines that helped free Europe during World War II. Brave young men manned these planes and ships and are true American heroes.
So what you're looking at today is a B-17 Flying Fortress. This is the type of aircraft that basically won the war in Europe. It later served also in the Pacific. This particular B-17 was built in 1944. She went to the Pacific in 1945, too late to see combat. General MacArthur liked to use B-17s as his personal taxi between islands. After that, she was used to do aerial mapping of the Philippine Islands because we didn't have a good idea of how they were laid out. The plane is pretty sturdy. It's like a flying tank. All the systems were redundant, so everything was double. It took the most battle damage of any aircraft ever and came home. Our particular aircraft, the wings channel, said we are the most authentically restored of the aircraft capable of flight. During the war, there were 12,753 B-17s built. There are less than 50 fuselages left in the entire world. That includes everything in a museum or if it's up on a stick someplace. There are basically right now 5 capable of flight.
This was used after the war when many B-17s were being scrapped and melted down and the aluminum used for pots and pans. This one was on a mission in the South Pacific as a photo reconnaissance airplane. And then after that, a fire bombing company bought the airplane and used it to bomb forest fires with water and fire retardant. And that saved it again from the scrapyard. And then Commemorative Air Force, at the time it was Confederate Air Force, bought the airplane and spent 18 years restoring it in the desert in Arizona. And after it was restored, it was used as a flying museum, and that's what we do with it today, still taken on tour.
During World War II, like I said, she was used extensively in Europe. There was a 10-man crew on board, the 4 up front, which would be your bombardier, your navigator, your pilot, and your co-pilot, ranged in age between 22 to 25. Your 6 kids in the back ranged in age between 17 to 19. 10 kids on each crew. One Thursday in October of 1942, 100 B-17s left England to bomb the Schweinfurt ball bearing factories. That night, 1 came home. 10 kids on each plane. This was never pressurized, never insulated, so at altitude it is 70 degrees below zero inside this airplane. And then the windows would get frosted up, so they took them out. All of these shell casings come back inside the fuselage, so now you're walking around on hot marbles. You're freezing to death, people are trying to kill you, and you have to go to the target and back 35 times. If you got halfway there and your ship got shot up and you had to go home, it didn't count. If you got halfway there and you had a maintenance problem on your plane and you had to go back, it didn't count. You had to go to the target, drop your bombs, and come home 35 times. A lot of the guys that I've met over the years did it 50 times. They stayed until the complete end of the war. So these guys are heroes. This was not a fun job. The 8th Air Force alone lost more men than the entire Marine Corps did during the war. Up front, your officers, the guy that sat in that bubble in the front, navigator, and the pilot and the co-pilot were somewhere between 22 to 25 years old. The rest of the crew was 17 to 19. When you go look at the doors underneath there, you're going to see one where the guy listed his whole crew, and then behind 3 of the names it says KIA, that means killed in action. And then they're going to list the 3 prisoner of war camps that they survived.
This is the largest ship that was designed in World War II to actually ground itself on the beach and retract successfully. And the reason it's called landing ship tank is because this deck, the 3rd deck, you see is totally wide open like a huge barn. It's very unusual for a ship because you give up a lot of your watertight integrity, but it's designed to carry up to 20 Sherman battle tanks directly to an enemy beachhead.
I'm with the LST 325 to help bring the history of the naval ship LST and others like it to the people of the middle of the United States along the rivers. My duties when the ship is underway is I man the bridge. One of us logs the commands from the sea captain or the river pilot. He talks down through a brass tube just like you see in the movies, just like they did in Mark Twain's day, and tells us 2/3 ahead, 1/3 ahead, or whatever he wants to tell us to do. It's a pleasure to be here in Cape Girardeau to share this with the people.
It's very satisfying to take a living museum around to the people, as opposed to having it sit in a static display somewhere with the people having to travel to it. So it's very rewarding, and very happy to continue my service here. Also, it's nice to have them reciprocate, and a lot of the veterans will tell their own stories, how they served on this ship or similar type ships, and what service they had, and of course we still get a number of World War II veterans touring the ship too, and they're now in their 90s or more. So,
if you want to know the real history, you talk to the veterans. There's only a few left, and they'll tell you the way it was. I was at Iwo Jima invasion. LSTs stay out 5 miles or so away from the battle area where the guns can reach them, so they don't get sunk before they can deliver their packages. As far as this LST, once I found out, I went down to Chickasaw. It had come in from Greece, and I've been on it for over 10 years now, and go out 4 to 6 weeks. My time is spent with this ship, down repairing it, winterizing it, one of many now, just a volunteer, and I usually run the throttles on it, and been doing that all these years.
Touring it around helps us preserve the ship. That's where we make all the money, to keep painting it, fixing it, and welding it, and so on and so forth. So, but it's even more important to me because it's operational, and my dad served on one, and I get to see kind of what it was like on an operational ship. We don't do the things they did in World War II, but you know, we operate the ship the same way they did. It sits in Evansville 11 months a year, and it's constantly being maintained. All the guys who work on the ship come from 15 different states. So there's only a small cadre that stays in Evansville and does the maintenance. But 2 or 3 times a year, those of us from out of state go back to Evansville, and we do a major maintenance project.
Well, I'll tell you what, I will never be, never would have been, never will be an NFL football star. I wouldn't even get on the ice in the NHL. But I am one of only 50 men in the entire world that gets to do this. And it's truly an honor and a privilege to be part of this. It's an amazing group of people doing an amazing mission to keep a piece of American history alive, not just static sitting in one place, but alive and taking it out to the American public.
We started as a teacher's college in 1873, but that doesn't mean we're old-fashioned. At Southeast Missouri State, how we teach has certainly changed. we've partnered with Apple to create the world's only Evolution Center. And our learning communities offer support and collaboration from your first semester. Our program gets you in front of students year one. You're going to make a difference with the next generation, and we are going to prepare you.
I'm Denise Bullock, one half of the ownership of River Ridge Winery.
And I'm Rob Bullock, the other half of the ownership of River Ridge Winery.
Rob first stopped at River Ridge Winery in 1995. I was in the vineyard working. Joni was running the tasting bar. That was the first wine Rob Bullock had ever tasted.
Back when this road was still a gravel road and there was nothing but the old house part of the winery, and it was purely by accident, and skidded to a stop when we saw one little sign that said winery on it. Came in, had my first wine tasting right here, bought my first bottle of wine from here, and bought my first winemaking book from here. So I had the wine bug from that time.
They're working in St. Louis, and we see them every couple of months, every time they're back in the area. So we just, over the period, became very good friends. 2 years ago, we were walking on the beach at Gulf Shores, Alabama. We started talking about an exit strategy. Well, for a long time, people have approached us wanting to buy the winery. And we had always told them, no, we're not interested in that. And we decided that we better start listening to some of these people. And we did. I said, Rob, people are trying to buy my winery. And he said, why didn't you notify us? I said, you're notified.
They are able to show us something that they've learned through the 20 plus years that they've been running the winery.
Yeah, 20 plus years of winemaking, and really having built the place from scratch. The handshake parts of buying River Ridge Winery was that Gus is the wine cat. He's laying out back right now in the sun, and it was to make sure that it was okay if he stayed. And then Michelle, she's the winery dog, but she's actually Jerry and Joni's dog, but she doesn't know any different.
Really takes her job pretty seriously.
Probably the most famous is Lucky Dog. It was our mascot 14 years. We have a wine with her picture on the label, Lucky Dog.
We want to continue to be a very special place, for everybody that comes out. People come out here like this setting, this type of setting. So that's one of our biggest things, to continue the way it's been run, and then anything we can improve, we will continue to improve. Otherwise, we want to be here so that, just like the couple sitting outside today, it's their 13th anniversary. They've been coming here 13 in a row. We'd hate to have that end.
I'm already seeing, and I'm very pleased with what's happened so far.
When we first started coming, it was just the little house that was built in 1894, and then all the additions of the terrace and the pavilions and this cafe. This wasn't here when we first started coming out, so it's kind of a unique situation to see a place that's grown over the past
22 years.
22 years. So.
And we grow grapes that they say can't be grown in Missouri. We grow Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Syrah, Chardonnay, just on top of the hill above the Mississippi River. So that's special, because it's just not being done. It's difficult to do, so we have to do it. Take a lot of time to put a lot of care into that.
I was told 30 years ago could not be grown in the state of Missouri. I've been growing them 14 years, and they're healthy and good shape. So it takes a challenge. Somebody tells you you can't do it, that's what you do.
At Chan's restaurant, the most unique decorations are the origami folded from dollar bills, all of which handmade by Kiki, one of the employees. She has been working at Chan's for 9 years. Kiki moved to the United States with her family 10 years ago from China. This past decade, she became interested in folding origami while getting used to her new life in a new country.
欣赏一下我的作品，这个我很喜欢，26个字母有3D 的效果。你如果从侧面看的话，它应该有4层。这个就是用1块钱折的，有眼睛、鼻子、嘴巴。这个是分车，用中国人民币折的。143 I love you， 爱就1个单词嘛，然后 love LOV 有4个单词，然后 you 是3个单词，然后这个520是中国的 I love you， 是我们中国人会说我爱你就用520表达。
Kiki has already folded more than 500 origami pieces. The shapes of her origami are very diverse.
突然之间，你是就喜欢折纸，还是说你从小的时候其实就对折纸感兴趣？
没有，小时候没有这方面的想法呢。到了美国以后嘛，然后在餐馆工作，然后有一天一个客人那个进来买东西算钱。然后他就拿了一张那个用这1块钱折的那个衣服，我当时就特别喜欢，我就自己回家，然后就把它拆开琢磨，后来我就慢慢喜欢上了，我觉得特别可爱嘛。好了，这我们都是天空中的一颗星星。
Kiki started learning online and buying origami books to improve her skills. Over time, she wanted to challenge herself by folding bills from other countries. Since the proportion of each country's bill is different, she needs to discover new steps to adapt to different bills. Kiki also says it's a great way for her to learn English and make friends in this country.
这个作品是，其实在我们国内的时候，中国的时候，在我读初中的时候，其实一般学校里面很多人都会折，因为他折这个心表示爱心嘛，送给他自己喜欢的人啊。然后这个作品有3颗星，它侧面是1颗星，然后在这边侧面也是1颗星，然后一个大星。这其实也是象征的一个家庭里面有夫妻、丈夫跟妻子，然后2颗星，然后同心协力变成了1颗星。就是心，爱心。毕竟现在这个社会，大家都是低头族，天天都是玩手机，动手方面好像越来越落后了。我觉得其实有时候你不玩手机，你动手画个画呀，做一些手工艺品啊，其实比那个玩手机来得更开心了，就是欣赏着自己的作品就很开心。然后如果说有人有人欣赏你的作品，你会更开心的。所以说，也是因为这些客人，因为这些客人，所以他才激励了我。因为客人欣赏我折的东西，所以才会让我坚持了这么久。喜欢的东西就得坚持去做。
What do you think about the origami?
I love it. Which one do I like the best? I think right now I'm really liking the alphabet.
I think it's really artistic and beautiful, and every time we come here, and my son, he just loves to look at all of the origami. He can just look at each one, spend all kinds of time looking at each one. It's neat that you can take something as simple as paper and turn it into something so amazing.
I think it's pretty fun to look at, especially while we're eating. We can have conversation and try to guess how many dollars are in each piece and different things like that.
10.
You think there's $10 bills in that?
Oh, I think there's more than that.
Rebecca.
Yeah, we were going to teach Rebecca how to make some origami.
Would that be fun to learn something? Yeah.
很多客人都建议说，哎呀，你就折了作品，把它那个镶在相框里面，然后拿去卖。其实这个卖我是不想卖，因为那个反正作品折出来就是给人欣赏的嘛，给人审美上面的享受。所以说，我也想过去学校当义工，教一些小朋友折纸动手嘛，动手可以提高小朋友的动手能力，然后也可以提高他们的想象力嘛。 做餐饮嘛，要谋生，所以说没有那么多的多余时间去学校。但我想说，等以后如果有机会的话，有这个各方面条件成熟的话，我就想，如果说去我儿子的那个学校教，不管去哪里教，就是教1个小时，或者比如说一个星期教1个小时教一种作品的话，其实也很好。这个菠萝是那个用人民币1角钱人民币折的，这个应该有300多张，用300多张、400多张折的嘛。这个其实折没有难度的，就是说要折这个，它是用一张一张折起来的，然后扣在一起的。其实它就像这样子，就把它可以一张一张拆开的那种，套进去的。
Kiki chose to fold bills because it's more unique than normal paper. Paper can be cut into any size, but bills have a certain proportion, which makes it harder to fold than papers. This limitation is not a bad thing because the results are great.
现在觉得是什么？秘密。
Kiki says she would like to give her origami away to a museum perhaps someday. Actually, the restaurant already looks like a small museum to me because it showcases artwork of someone's passion and effort through the time it took to make them.
You can sing in the shower and doodle in the margins of a notebook for the rest of your life, or you can push your creativity to center stage and develop the skills to back it up. At Southeast Missouri State University, you can surround yourself with minds that are as creative and weird and beautiful as yours, at a campus dedicated exclusively to the arts, with classmates who share your passion, and faculty who know the industry. You've got talent. Let's see what you got.
One of my students, Cody Cole, came up to me with this idea for a musical about this romantic World War II love story about an Irish immigrant who's fighting for the Americans. And I said, oh, that's great. And he said, yeah, I already have these songs written.
One of the songs in the show called Think of Home. That was actually the first song ever written for the show. And I was playing it, and then I stumbled across this structure, and I was like, alrighty, let's add some words to this. This sounds cool. And then it just turned into a giant what if. I was like, this really sounds like a song that would be sung like at a church pew for a priest that's about to send off soldiers. And I was like, yeah, I want to make this happen.
Cody is fantastically talented. You know, he just sits down and writes gorgeous music, and it's dramatic, you know, because songs for musicals have to have a dramatic purpose. They're not just, they have to be more than catchy. They have to be catchy and tell a story. And he's just super talented at that. And he played some for me, and I said, well, let's find you a playwright. And we thought, the chair of our department is an excellent playwright.
At first I volunteered. I said, well, look, why don't you, I asked him to storyboard it, and I was like, okay. I said, well, why don't you let me try my hand at maybe writing the first scene. And so I wrote the first scene, and then I wrote the second scene.
I was able to work the storyboard from his writing and his writing from my music. It turned into a symbiotic relationship on how this story really progressed.
The music in a musical has the #1 requirement of continuing to tell the story, but it's told at a moment in the story in which the words simply aren't enough by themselves. So that's the way that you have to approach it, which is really where it comes into the collaboration, because you're telling the exact same story. Otherwise you get the story and then the story stops and then we're going to sing a song and then we're going to pick the story back up. Doesn't work that way at all. There are some musicals that is the case, but that's what you fight against. The music has to, has to move the story forward just like the dialogue does. So this is where we have to work in tandem with each other and as we're developing the story.
I have a friend who works at the Gallery Players, which is an off-Broadway theater in New York, and they do a new musical series, and I thought, oh, this would be great to do a reading of. So I wrote my friend and I said, hey, we'd be interested in doing this for Overtures, their new musical series, and she said, well, send us the script, and then they loved it, and they were like, great, we would love for you to produce it. This is fantastic for the Conservatory of Theater and Dance, because this doesn't happen on the university level anywhere. Very rarely do you develop a show and bring it to New York. I can't think of any other school that has done this. I know Cody and Ken have been working on probably for a year and a half now.
We are two writers who are, he's working on his part, I'm working on my part. We communicate like every single day. Whenever I have a revision, I send it to him. And I say, this is what, so every time that there's, right now we probably have, I don't know, probably 75 different drafts.
When I'm in the cafeteria, I don't know why, maybe it's just the atmosphere, because I can look out and see the river and I can see the bridge and I can just kind of clear myself from everything. And then I'm able to just go repeatedly, one after another. I remember sitting down and writing 4 songs in about an hour.
It's the first time that a student and an faculty member have ever collaborated to do a musical that is going to be our main stage flagship musical next year. I'm proud. I'm proud.
Whether it's for business or just a getaway, Cape Air is your wings in the Midwest. Cape Air serves 6 destinations, including Kirksville, Quincy, Fort Leonard Wood, Cape Girardeau, Marion, and Owensboro. Fly from Cape Girardeau to St. Louis with fares starting at just $49 each way. With easy connections through Lambert St. Louis International Airport, Cape Air connects you to the Midwest and the world. Book today at capeair.com or call 800-CAPE-AIR and enjoy the ride.
Thanks for watching River Tales. Each month, we'll travel the region to meet fascinating people, highlight important events, and find new places to discover. Join us again for River Tales.